You will agree with me by the end of this presentation. This is the same. This is the same thing. It's the same it's the same thing. What are you actually doing? You're building buildings to build more buildings. All you're doing is build buildings. RTS games have it correct. Minimum economy. Maximum gameplay. Hello everyone and welcome to my presentation. This is Economy Mechanics, a sabotaging strategy games, a thesis. What is she talking about? Many strategy games focus way too much on economy management. Often, they do it so much that the game is worse. They put so much economy management mechanics in that you spend all of your time playing the economy, doing the economy stuff, and you don't play the game. Some games are economy simulators disguised as strategy games. Most importantly, I don't really see anyone talking about this. Everybody always asks, how is the economy gameplay? What's it like? How good is it? How do you do it? How complicated is it? Never do they ask, why is there economy gameplay? Nobody stops to think, gee, I wonder what putting economy management and economy mechanics into my video game, into my strategy game, what's that doing to the game? I don't feel like anybody really stops to talk about this. And I'm annoyed because I think it's a problem. You will agree with me by the end of this presentation, because every time I've explained this to someone, they always end up agreeing with me. I don't know if this is anything to do with how like intimidating I am, because I know that I'm very like large and like I have a tendency to like loom over people, you know, because I'm like so tall and intimidating. And people always say that I'm really like scary and stuff. Economy management. I'm building an economy. This is propaganda. You are following a flowchart. You think you're building an economy. You're not building an economy. You're following a flowchart for the best decisions to make in order to have an economy. So what actually is an economy? There's two parts. The first is resources in. This is something that you receive over either real-time or on a turn-based basis. I don't think there's a different kind of time unit. I'm pretty sure real-time and turn-based are the two units of time that exist when it comes to receiving resources. So the second part of an economy are the resources out. So you get your resources in, but you need something to spend them on. Sometimes referred to as resource sinks. They are things that you actually use your resources on. I'll be giving examples in the next slide. The important point I want to make about this is that every single game that exists can be viewed through the lens of resources in over time, which are then spent on resource sinks. So, what are some examples of economies in video games that follow this model? The first, obviously, civilization. You get food, you get production, you get science over time, you get that per turn, and then you spend it on buildings, units, science. If you get gold, you might make trade deals with people. Culture is basically science, but a different like tree. That's a pretty normal example of a video game economy. I think what helps to think of it this way is the second example, Cookie Clicker. Cookie Clicker is an incremental game. In Cookie Clicker, you get cookies over time, and you spend that cookies on building and upgrades that give you more cookies. It's a very, very simple cycle. You get cookies, you spend cookies, the spending of cookies gets you more cookies. And that's basically every incremental game, is you get a number, you have a number, the number goes up over time, and then you use the number on stuff, and the stuff gets you more number. And it's just that back and forth. It's just get number, spend number, get number, spend number, get number, spend number. Balatro is another example of a game that has an economy in. This is where we're going to start getting more abstract, and you have to really understand it as resources in. So in Balatro, you get money, obviously, but the amount of hand draws you play. So I think you start with 3 hand plays in Balatro, and you get 3 discards. You have a limited number of those per fight. You could see a fight has a turn, like a sort of on a larger scale, you're like taking turns fighting different opponents, right? And then you spend the money on card packs, jokers, card upgrades, shop upgrades, but you spend your hand draws on cards themselves and actually playing hands, and you have to play good hands in order to win. And so like you have a limited amount of hand draws money and hand discards, and you're spending those to try and maximize your points, and that's like the objective of the game. So you can view it through this lens of like, those are your resources in, and there's a bunch of different things for money that can be sunk, and then hand draws and discards are specifically in the sort of most micro level of like when you're actually scoring points. That's when you spend those resources, right? Counter-Strike. We're gonna get weirder with with games. So your resources in for Counter-Strike, you get money. Each player has health. Each player has a number of bullets. Arguably even number of bullets in like loaded in the gun before they have to reload is, as I understand, a really important mechanic. Like reloading is an important thing that happens when you run out of money, when you run out of bullets. And players is a resource. So like you spend your money on guns, you spend your bullets on shooting and being able to hurt other players and kill them. You spend your health on being able to get hit. If you have less health, you're not going to be able to take as much risk without getting punished easily, right? If you're trying to like peek around a corner and you've got no health, you've got like 1 HP, you're gonna die. Econ round is literally a thing in CS. Yeah, so I think the money thing is the more obvious thing. I think the least obvious thing is players is a resource. You have 5 players, you get those every round. You have to choose as a team how to spend them, except the spending of the players is just, where do you position? Which objective do you go for? Which objective are you defending? Which parts of the map are you covering? Like there's a whole tactical game around positioning, and that's because you get a limited number of players. You don't get more of those, you only have 5, and so you have to choose how to spend those in different, very specific ways. The last game I want to give as an example of a game that has an economy is football. So in football, you have a number of resources. You have substitutions, you have the positioning of your players, which I think is maybe a little bit of a stretch for like a resource, but if you like see it as you have to make decisions on how you spend your positioning, like where you actually put your players. Arguably, it's the players themselves rather than the positioning. You have a set amount of energy that your players have that will go down over time based on how your players act and how you, if you're the coach or manager or whoever it is that makes decisions about football teams, like if you're telling them what to do, if you're telling them to be more aggressive and to run harder, then they're going to run out of energy more and you're not going to have as much energy for later. And then like, I think this extends to like understanding how goals is a resource, because if you're ahead 2-0, you kind of have some wiggle room. So you're sort of like, okay, we're ahead 2-0. We can't really afford to be so aggressive because we're going to mess up on our aggression, and maybe they'll, you know, catch us out of position and we won't respond as fast because we're low on energy, or, you know, so we're going to try and play more conservatively, maybe play more defensively. Maybe it's like easier to, I'm going to be honest, I don't really understand the specifics of football positioning, like the actual formations and stuff. I watched a couple World Cup games recently and I was like, wow, they sure do have 10 people standing in a line to stop balls getting through. But it's like, yeah, they're low on energy, they're ahead on goals, they can afford to not have to spend their energy being aggressive, because they're going to win if the game just levels out. And so they can focus on being defensive, which can often be a lot easier, especially if you have the ball. It's a lot easier to kick a ball between 2 players than it is to be the guy running back and forth between them, right? Like there's a limit on that. So hopefully I've successfully explained the different kinds of economies that can exist and how abstract it can feel really abstract, but just the concept of resources in versus resources out can be applied to, I think, every game. So, what is the problem? You may be wondering, Overlite, you've just talked about economies and how they exist. Yes, that's all, like, that's explanation 101. The more cohesive point is that the more recent strategy games that have come out in, like, the last 5 years or so, the more modern ones are, in my opinion, heading in the wrong direction when it comes to economy mechanics. What is the modern strategy game experience? You're a human being, you want to play a strategy game, you load up the strategy game. What do you actually do when you're playing? Well, you to begin with. You click on your city. You spend your resources to build a building. The building gives you resources. The resources give you technology. And then the technology also gives you resources, right? And then you spend resources to build a building. And the building gives you resources. And the resources gives you technology. And the technology gives you resources. And then you spend resources to build a building. And then the building gives you resources. And then the resources give you technology. And the technology gives you resources. And that's how I feel when I launch, like, most modern, like, big company strategy games. And you do this ad infinitum until the game is over. And after having done this enough times, if you do it well enough, you win. And it's like, hooray, I did it. I clicked the right buildings and technologies in the right order. So I wanted to list off some games that this is a problem in. The Civilization series 5, 6, and 7. Specifically, these are all games that I have played. There's a lot of strategy games. I haven't played them all. This is probably going to reveal that I'm a specific type of strategy gamer. So of the Paradox games, Stellaris, EU5, and Victoria 3 they have serious economy management problems. Victoria 3 kind of gets a pass because it's supposed to be an economy simulator. So it's like, okay, that's fine. But Stellaris and EU5 suffer really, really badly, in my opinion, from what they're supposed to be about and how much time you actually spend just building buildings and researching technology in order to build more buildings and research technology. The Amplitude games, if you haven't heard of them, the Endless series, Endless Legend 1 and 2. I forgot to mention Endless Space 1 and 2. All right, this is for the illiterate of you. I put here's all the logos of all the different strategy games. Here's a list of games that have economies in them and have economy management, but it's not a problem for the game itself. In Total War Warhammer, you have an economy, but you can't win just from doing economy stuff. You have to play the game. You have to do the fighting. That's how you win the game. You cannot win just from doing economy. Age of Wonders, 3 and 4 I've played. I have no doubt that it's the same in 1 and 2. You have an economy and you have some economy management, and you can build buildings to get more resources to build more buildings, but those games, like Total War Warhammer, you have to fight stuff in order to win. Heroes of Might and Magic, Songs of Conquest, and Heroes Hour are the exact same thing as the previous two. You have an economy, sort of, although it's even less than the previous two, and you can build buildings which give you more economy resources, but by and large, you have to fight stuff in those. And being good at fighting stuff is how you win those. Any RTS, there's technically economy management. You can build buildings in RTSs in order to get more resources in order to build buildings. But if you do that, you're going to get run at with a guy on horse, and he's going to kill all of your guys, and it's going to be over, you know? Note on resource making more resources. The cycle essentially is usually because of how badly balanced single player part of the game is. When you start to rebalance the game a bit and play multiplayer, at least in Civ, you run into the idea of opportunity cost, which does break the resource into more resource cycle you talked about. Yeah, there's a version of this PowerPoint and video and presentation where I name a game that really leans into economy management, and I think is the best version of this, and it's Civ 6. Having just complained about it, the multiplayer scene in Civ 6 is thriving. They play modded with a balance mod, and it's genuinely really, really compelling to watch them all like optimize against each other. They're all functionally working on very similar like puzzles, like economy puzzles at the same time, and they're all trying to optimize. And it's really fascinating watching all of the insane like little tricks they do to make their economies go faster. Civ 5 Lecod multiplayer is also thriving a lot. Yes, I haven't watched any of that, but I do see that lots of people do like playing that. Yeah, I think I am looking at these from a single player perspective. That might be why the RTS thing is like nobody plays RTS as single player. If they do, they play story mode where it's like asymmetrical. So the economy stuff doesn't really make sense. And often in a lot of those like missions, you don't even have a base in RTSs. Ah, yes, most indie games. Most indie games, rather than building a whole like economic system, will just make game mechanics that are fun and interesting to engage with. And so they just don't have economy management in them, and it's just not a problem. Like, they completely skip the issue of how much attention economy management takes by simply designing interesting games. It's just that easy. Oh yeah, here's a bunch of logos again for the illiterate of you who wanna. Of the games I've mentioned, where it's a problem, there's a smaller subset of them where this is way more of a problem, in my opinion. It's these ones, specifically the ones in red are the worst offenders, and the ones in yellow are like softer but still bad offenders. So Civ 6 and 7, 6 gets a pass because of the multiplayer stuff, and also because it kind of is just a puzzle game when you sort of look at it. The multiplayer part is mostly what saves Civ 6, if I'm real. Stellaris EU5 and Victoria 3 are all absolutely fucking heinous for this. It is insane how much of those games you can win simply by sitting and building buildings until you have more resources from the buildings, and then building more buildings with the resources, and eventually you've done that enough that you have outscaled every other opponent in the game, and you just kind of win. And the game's just over. Which, again, Victoria 3, kind of forgiven. Humankind, I will get onto in a second. I've got a very good slide about that one. But Overlite, what's the difference? What's the difference between the games where it's not a problem and the games where it is a problem? So they all have economy management in them. They all go, you can all build buildings, you get resources in all those games, you research technologies. What's the difference? Why are they so different? Why are some of them so much worse than the others? It's the player experience. Specifically, it's the emotion that the game is trying to invoke from its players. Which I am, of course, talking about dopamine. When you build a building and your production doubles, you feel dopamine. You build a science laboratory in Stellaris, and suddenly you've doubled your science. You're like, oh wow, that's so nice. You build a workshop in Civ, and suddenly all your buildings are built 2 tons faster, and you're like, wow, what the heck? This is great. The idea that getting a bigger number from the building, getting more resources, makes you feel good inside, makes you feel warm inside, is something that all of these games are trying to tap into when they increase how many economy mechanics they have in them. And then your emotional response is like, oh, that was fun, I had fun, I liked that. I liked when I built the workshop and the number went up and I was like, ooh, that's so nice. You know, that's what it's tapping into. And you're like, I want to keep playing. Just one more turn. Just one more hit of dopamine. We're being played for fools. The whole construction of economy management in these games is literally just to make a number go up through way too many layers of abstraction. I think it's frankly ridiculous that people go, oh, this is such a fun game, and it's like, what did you do? And it's like, I built a science laboratory and my science number doubled and now I'm happy. It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I thought this was a space opera simulator. I thought this was like an ahistorical sandbox. Like, what are you doing? To reiterate what I've said so far, you open a strategy game, you click build, the building finishes, your resource number goes up, and you feel dopamine, you feel happy, you're like, wow, this is so fun, this is great, I want to keep playing. There is a genre of game that does this way better. It's incremental games. I deceived you earlier, I put an incremental game on the list. Cookie Clicker has been here the entire time. If you've been paying attention and actually thinking about what happens when you abstract these concepts out and think about how the gameplay actually works, in Cookie Clicker, you spend cookies on buildings and upgrades, you get more cookies. In Civilization, you spend production on buildings, it gets you production, it gets you science, the science gets you technology. It's the same thing. It's the same resources spent on resource sinks that gives you more resources in. It's exactly the same. Just strategy games choose to sort of fold it up in more layers, and sometimes there is a whole extra game around it, but sometimes they forget who they are and they go, oh, you know what? People seem to really like this number go up thing. We should put more of it, and suddenly it doesn't feel so much like a strategy game anymore. To iterate, you are playing Cookie Clicker. You get cookies. You spend the cookies on buildings. Your cookie number goes up. You feel dopamine. This is the same. This is the same thing. It's the same it's the same thing. Economy management in strategy games, it's the same thing as number go up incremental games, and I very strongly believe this. In strategy games, like, it might get you more military, like, oh, I have more units. Like, in the incremental games, there's often not an actual objective. The objective in of itself is to make number go up, whereas in strategy games, the number go up does something else. But the economy management concept and the resource in, resource out feedback loop is the same. So these are the worst offenders. And the reason they're the worst offenders is because they put the most focus on economy management. Civ 7, Stellaris, EU5, Victoria 3, Humankind all have most of their gameplay time is spent managing economies. They're optimizing the number go up equals good game formula. But wait, there's more. Optimizing for dopamine means adding more mechanics that make your resources go up. So the modern strategy game experience is actually way worse than what I described earlier. You think it's resources on building, building on resources, resources into technology, technology into resources. You think it's that. Oh no. The actual modern strategy game experience is you click on your city, you spend resources to build a building, the building gives you resources, you interact with a secondary mechanic to get resources, you interact with a tertiary mechanic to get resources, you interact with a quaternary mechanic to get resources, the resources give you technology, the technology gives you resources, you spend resources to build a building, the building gives you resources, and then you close the game. Because this is all you're doing, and you're like, oh, I'm just doing this over and over and over again. So, I've ranted a lot about this, but I just wanted to actually give some examples. I wanted to actually describe the actual gameplay mechanics that exist in these games that make me act like this and be able to group them all together. Starting with Stellaris. So in Stellaris, you click on your planet, you spend minerals to build a district, you assign an agenda to give you resource bonuses, you spend Unity to unlock a tradition for resource bonuses, you make a commercial agreement for trade resources, you pick the event pop-up that gives you the most resource bonuses, and you build buildings in your starbase for resources, and you're randomly given specimens for your archive that also give resource bonuses, you activate an edict for resource bonuses, you pick a technology that gives you the most resources, you click a decision on your planet that gives you a resource bonuses, you choose a leader park that gives you the most resource bonuses, you click on your planet, and you close the game. Because this is all you've been doing. For like 6 hours. For like 6 hours, this is it. This is the game. It's horrific. Example number 2, Civ 6. You click on a city, you place a district in the spot that gives you the most resources, you pick the governor that gives the most resources, you befriend the city-state that gives the most resource bonuses, you slot the policy card that gives the most resources, you build the wonder that gives the most resources, you pick the tradery that gives the most resources, you make economic alliances for resources, you pick the religious perks that give the most resources, you click on your 9th city, and you close the game, because you actually have 15 of them. You are once again just doing this over and over and over again until the game ends. Example 3, Humankind. You click on a city. You place a district in the spot that gives the most resources. You have excess production, so you place another district. You have excess production, so you place another district. You have excess production, so you place another district. You have excess production, so you place another district. You have excess production, so you place another district. Then you click in your second city, and you close the game. If you've ever played Humankind, this is exactly how it goes down. You hit like turn like 70 or 80, and the like cross civ synergy hits a bit too hard. You have too much production, and then you're placing like 12 districts a turn, and it's just completely out of control. But that's also all you're doing. Like, that's, again, the whole game is you're just putting districts down. And you're like, damn, this actually fucking sucks. Example number 4, Civ 7. I actually have to come clean with this one. I have not played enough Civ 7 to accurately describe how bad the problem is. I took a look at it like a year ago for a video. I took some screenshots because I was like, wow, this is bad. And then I didn't make the video. So instead, I'm just gonna let you look at these screenshots. You can see here, there's like a resource interaction thing. You get one special, I think this is like a special luxury or something. It gives you a percentage bonus. And you have a building that gives you production. And then it also gives you production and all these like different like upgrades, and then you have a technology that gives you another building that also does that, but this one does it with adjacency bonuses, and then it gives you a wonder that also does that with specific stuff, and then it gives you the technology itself gives you a little plus bonus. And then over here you have another technology that does that. It's like, oh, I'm getting all these buildings and wonders and technology, and it's like, what are you actually doing? You're building buildings to build more buildings. All you're doing is build buildings. You're just playing this little game where you're just building buildings. It's like, wow, I'm building an empire. And it's like, no! You're playing an incremental game in disguise. You've been played for fools. Huh. That was exhausting, wasn't it? Wasn't it exhausting? All that text, all those words. I guess if you weren't reading them, listening, that's... I don't know how many of you are actually like reading the text I'm writing. What I'm learning here is that the Command & Conquer series is the best strategy game. One resource, one primary method of gathering it, job done, now focus on stabbing. Yes! RTS games have it correct! Minimum economy. Maximum gameplay. That's exactly... that's exactly how it goes down. Okay, 4 sides of nothing. Does everyone feel relaxed? Everyone feeling soothed after I went on that tangent? I'm losing my voice. This is crazy. Alright. Everybody ready? Everybody ready to go? Here's the obvious problem. The first time you do something, it's fun. Dopamine happens, you're like, wow, I feel great. What a nice time. What a beautiful world I live in. I want to keep playing. The second time, not as good as the first. You're like, okay, production in my second city, workshop in my second city, you know, second laboratory, doesn't really hit as hard as the first. Second laboratory, I will say, is still pretty good in Stellaris, but like, you get to like 10th, 12th laboratory, you're like, I don't know. I don't know if this feels so good. Like, I'm just building more laboratories. Do you see where I'm going with this? Every time you interact with an economy game mechanic, it gets less meaningful. Second building, not as good. Second technology, not as good. Second governor, not as good. Second tradition, not as good. It's always a little bit less every time. And eventually, it just becomes tedious. You're just like, oh, laboratory number 30. Build, 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 build. Upgrade, 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 upgrade. City number 14. I have to keep my economy growing to outpace my enemies, so I'm just gonna keep building. You've been reduced from a human into a tiny little processing machine that just builds more buildings. Modern strategy games are overloaded with mechanics when it comes to managing your economy. And they're all fucking tedious. Everything I've described. After your first game, which is like, what, you play one game of a strategy game, you one run, that's like 5 to 10 to 15 hours. Second time around, it's the same thing over and over and over again. You build buildings to build buildings. You make traditions and technologies to make traditions and technologies. You get culture to get culture. And it's just the same thing over and over again. And it's just really fucking tedious. Also, it's too much micro. But I think micro in video games is worth an entire presentation on its own, so we're not doing that right now. This is the slide where I say that some people like this kind of game. Yes, some people like this kind of game. This is interesting for some people. You know, sometimes I like this kind of game where I'm like, oh, I just want the number to go up. You know, or like, oh, it's kind of interesting to like have a number go up, and then I use the number go up to like stab someone with my really, really sharp sword because I have such a good economy. Like, the economy makes you, like, the nicest sword you've ever seen, and then you, like, stab a guy, and it feels like, wow, that's the sword I made with my economy. Like, wow. Good for you if you like this kind of game. I hope you get more strategy games that are actually incremental games in disguise. Oh, that kind of reads like I'm negging someone. Like, I feel like I'm negging strategy games with that one. That was not intentional. That was not meant to be. I did not mean to be that sassy. Also, you could view this kind of gameplay as a puzzle game. Civ 6, I kind of was saying earlier, kind of like puzzle gamey when you think about the district adjacency stuff. Like, there's sort of a puzzle game there. I could talk about all of this in a lot more detail, but this PowerPoint is too long. So we're gonna keep this next part brief. There's a version of this presentation where I explain that Balatro does the dopamine economy better than all the games that I have mentioned, but that genuinely takes 4 slides of full text and talking to explain that, so we're moving on. If you notice, all the way back. That's right. Second game was an incremental, third game is Balatro. I genuinely think Balatro does the economy management equals dopamine thing better than every strategy game. What do I actually want from strategy games? Player fantasy. I want player fantasy. What I want is player fantasy. Just give me player fantasy. Literally all I want is player fantasy. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I play these games for. I'm the kind of person who's playing these games. I want my space opera. I want my historical sandbox. I want my cool fantasy figures to fight each other. Like, give me the player fantasy. What is player fantasy? We don't have time for that. I don't think I explained that. I'm trying to keep it brief. You don't know what player fantasy is. Okay. When you play Stellaris, you have the option to be a hive mind. I have played Stellaris and picked a hive mind and picked Devouring Swarm because I went into the game thinking, you know what I want to do? I want to eat the galaxy. I really want to like be like an aggressive, horrifying, monstrous species that goes and eats the whole galaxy. Or, you know, you do another run and you're like, oh, I really want to build a beautiful society where all aliens can come and live in peace. And you do that, and it's like, oh my god, I'm building a society. Except you're not doing that. You're building buildings all the fucking time. All you're doing is building buildings. Eating the galaxy does not compare to the correct build order and correctly teching up your unity to hit your ascension as soon as possible, because that's the earliest power spec that you get that lets you overrun your nearest neighbor and then hit the snowball as quickly as possible. Like, that's... You want to be like, oh, I want to eat the galaxy, and you're sat there fucking constructing laboratories and clicking settle and checking all of your different planets to see which of them have unemployed people so that you can put more buildings on them. You're like, I want to conquer the world as Napoleon. You launch Civ 6. What do? You pick France, you settle your city, you go scout, worker, trade district, government plaza. It's one of those two. I don't remember the specific order. I think it's like trade route, settler. You get your 3 city timing, and then you fucking do this. And it's like, oh, I'm conquering the world as France. No, you're not conquering the world as France. You're playing fucking Connect 4 with science districts in order to give each other the correct most amount of science. You're slowing in policy cards. Like, the desire to experience something. Like, you play Warhammer, play Total War Warhammer, because you're like, I want big monsters to fight each other. I want my cool elf army. Like, I want to watch them doing a big fight. I want to watch guys get shot to pieces by expert archers, like legendary, fantastical archers. I want to watch Skaven. I want to watch Skaven call down lightning storms on people. Like, that's what the player fantasy is. And games that increase the amount of economy management that you do and force you to engage with these feedback loop systems in order to get to the thing you actually want to do, in my opinion, are wasting your fucking time. It's like, why would I play Stellaris? I don't play it anymore. They had a recent update that was like so interesting, where they added nomadic ships, where you can literally live on the ships and go around. I was like, oh, this is so cool. I launched it up, and all I was doing, I was clicking on my ship, I was building districts, and I was clicking excavate system over and over and over again. And that's like all I was doing on top of everything else. And I was like, oh, it's the same. I'm doing the same thing again. I'm just optimizing an economy. I don't get to actually experience the nomadic thing, because all I'm actually fucking doing is building buildings. So what mechanics actually provide more player fantasy? What mechanics... Because there is a problem here where you think, okay, if we remove all the economy, what are you actually doing in Stellaris? You're scouting around and then you're fighting. And sometimes you get more species. And that's kind of it. So in my opinion, the way that I think you could increase player fantasy, and which mechanics would actually increase this, are mechanics that interact with the world. That's my only point, by the way. Mechanics that interact with your environment. I genuinely believe that just more ways to interact with other stuff that isn't your own empire or your own cities or your own whatever it is. I genuinely believe that is like the core way that you can make games, strategy games, which actually focus on player fantasy rather than getting extremely bogged down in building buildings so you can build more buildings. So I want to give you an example of a game that gets it. This is a game I played a couple weeks ago, and I was like, holy shit, this is great. I love this. It's called Shadows of Forbidden Gods. In this game, you have 2 resources. You're basically an eldritch apocalypse. There's a couple of types you can choose. You pick one. You have your evil agents who do evil stuff for you, and your evil god powers that depend on which god you picked. They are time gated. You get them at set turn numbers. I think it's every 45 turns. There is almost no way to increase them. So you only have those 2 things. You don't have any underlying economy. You don't have gold. You don't have food. You don't have supply chains. There is none of that. You don't have to do any of that stuff. The resources in this game, agents and god powers, they're time gated. There's no way to increase them. You don't have to think about what you can do in order to get more of them. There's basically no way to do it. What actually happens is that you then spend all of your time actually playing the game. And it's really fun. You get your agents to do evil stuff. You turn people insane. You bring about plagues and famines. Sometimes you burn stuff to the ground. You enshroud the world in darkness. You turn things to winter. Like, there's so many things you can do, and it's really fun. In conclusion, modern strategy games make me sad. They have way too much economy management. It makes them worse as a result. My player fantasy is ruined. And it doesn't have to be this way. A better world is possible. We can live in a world where we have these strategy games, sure, and other strategy games where you actually get to interact with stuff and not just build buildings for 200 turns till the game is over. Hey everyone, it's Overlite's editor here. In case you weren't aware, I am actually making my own strategy game, and I will probably be making videos on it in the future. So, you know, subscribe button if you wanna. Alright, peace.